Welcome back to The Fight. I'm Justine Ward. We're so happy you decided to join us. Joining us now is John Hoffman, a 1980 alum of Notre Dame who works as the head of policy and advocacy at Janssen Pharmaceuticals, which is a subsidiary of Johnson & Johnson. John, thanks so much for joining us. Welcome to The Fight.
Thanks for having me. And I have the privilege, because of my affiliation with Notre Dame, to be the spokesperson here. But I represent tens of thousands of really bright, really dedicated, really passionate J&J employees that are working around the world, around the clock, to get all of our products, not just vaccines, that can help with COVID to the people that need them. So privileged to have that opportunity.
We know the scientific community is hard at work. You mentioned Johnson & Johnson. They've been working to develop a vaccine for COVID-19. What has this process looked like?
It's really got two parts. The first part is the discovery and development of a vaccine that is safe and effective to work on COVID-19. But then the other piece is to have it manufactured at massive quantities to deal with this global pandemic. So on the development side, we were fortunate enough to be able to build on some technology and science that we had developed for Ebola and SARS and some of the previous viruses to identify a couple of very promising vaccine candidates. And now we're working very closely with the regulatory agencies, NIH, FDA, et cetera, to really expedite the testing and approval process. As Dr. Salata said earlier, we have to make sure that these are safe and effective, and they have to go through the appropriate rigor of testing. That usually takes over 5 years, but because of the partnership of these government agencies, they're working really hard to shorten that, and we think that we're going to be able to do that in less than a year instead of greater than 5 years. And then on the manufacturing side, we made the decision as J&J that we can't wait until we find that whether that vaccine or those candidates work or not, that we were going to go at risk and begin manufacturing so that we could get as many doses of the vaccine, assuming it works, available as soon as possible. So we actually in March started manufacturing at risk with the hopes of delivering 1 billion vaccines during 2021, should it pan out.
All right, so you mentioned the trial period, but if you could give us a timeline as to when you think a vaccine would be available to the public, when would that be, and what would that process look like?
Well, our goal really is to, because we started the manufacturing, assuming, God willing, that the vaccine works and is safe, that with the manufacturing, we expect to have the first doses available early in 2021. And have a total of 1 billion available worldwide by the end of 2021.
So is the distribution of something like that, can it be difficult and complicated?
Absolutely, and it's not just for vaccines, as I mentioned, it's for all of our products. As you've seen with ventilators and PPE and some of the other things, once people identify that it works, there's a tendency to everybody to try to hoard it and grab it. And we really want to make sure that it gets distributed in the most effective manner, in a way that can have a positive impact and do the most good on the most people. So, what we did is we actually, because we have this, whether it's from Tylenol and hand sanitizer to medical surgical supplies, or whether some of our other pharmaceutical products, which we're testing now as treatments, we created a global pandemic response team at the corporate level. And unfortunately, was privileged to be a part of that. And one of the first things we did is we actually created what we called an ethical framework for decision-making for COVID-19 pandemic response. And it's really based on our credo values about patients first. And what we're doing there is that basically says, first and foremost, as we said before, we're going to work with the appropriate regulatory and clinical authorities to be very confident that the products work and they are safe for COVID patients. Secondly, we have to make sure that there's appropriate supply of those products for the existing patients that depend on them for the diseases that they're already indicated for or they're already being used for. And then finally, we're going to manage on a global basis as aggressively as possible to make sure there's as much available inventory for COVID patients, and make sure that we work with the local authorities and allocate that through them to make sure that it gets to the areas of most need with the greatest potential to provide the most benefit to patients.
Thank you so much, John. We know how critically important a future vaccine will be, so we really appreciate the information that you shared with us. Thanks for being here.
Thanks.